Hello everyone and welcome to lesson 3.4B. I've entitled this video, The Ultimate Breakup Letter. This video is going to cover pages 168 to 171. What steps did colonial leaders take toward independence? Common sense caused many colonial leaders to move toward declaring independence from Britain. It also deeply impressed many members of the Continental Congress. Richard Henry Lee of Virginia wrote to Washington, quote, "I am now convinced of the necessity for separation." In June 1776, Lee rose to his feet in Congress to introduce a resolution in favor of independence. Primary source, Richard Henry Lee, resolution at the Second Continental Congress, June 7, 1776. Resolved that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. Question number 1. What role did Thomas Paine's common sense play in American history? It pushed many leaders to going towards the idea of declaring independence from Britain. Question number 2. What resolution did Richard Henry Lee of Virginia put forth at the Second Continental Congress on June 7, 1776? He introduced a resolution in favor of independence. Drafting the Declaration of Independence. The delegates faced a difficult decision. There could be no turning back once they declared independence. If they fell into British hands, they would be hanged as traitors. A traitor is a person who betrays his or her country. After long debate, the Congress took a fateful step. It appointed a committee to draft a formal Declaration of Independence. The committee included John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Roger Sherman. Their job was to tell the world why the colonies were breaking away from Britain. Question number 3. What does the word traitor mean? A traitor is a person who betrays his or her country. Question number 4. Why was the resolution to declare independence a serious and solemn resolution to discuss? It was serious and solemn because once they did it, there was no turning back, and if they were caught, they would be hanged as traitors. So it literally was a life and death decision. Question 5. Who were the 5 important members of the committee selected to create the formal Declaration of Independence? They were John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Robert Livingston, Roger Sherman, and the most famous of this group for the Declaration, Thomas Jefferson. Question 6. What was the main purpose of the committee's declaration? Their purpose was to tell the world why the 13 colonies were breaking away from Britain. The committee asked Thomas Jefferson to write the document. Jefferson was one of the youngest delegates. He was a quiet man who spoke little at formal meetings. Among friends, however, he liked to sprawl in a chair with his long legs stretched out and talk for hours. His ability to write clearly and gracefully had earned him great respect. Question number 7. Which one of the 5 members was given the task of writing the Declaration? Thomas Jefferson. Question 8. If you were a friend of Thomas Jefferson back at that time, how would you describe him? Well, you'd probably describe him as tall, red-haired, and you'd probably say he was quiet in public, but in private, he was able to talk for a long time, and he was a very good writer. Adopting the Declaration of Independence. In late June, Jefferson completed the Declaration and it was read to the Congress. On July 2nd, the Continental Congress voted that the 13 colonies were, quote, free and independent states. After polishing Jefferson's language, the delegates adopted the document on the night of July 4th, 1776. They then ordered the Declaration of Independence to be printed. John Hancock, president of the Continental Congress, signed the Declaration first. He penned his signature boldly in large, clear letters. Quote, "There," he said, "I guess King George will be able to read that." Copies of the Declaration were distributed throughout the colonies. Patriots greeted the news of independence with joyous and sometimes rowdy celebrations. In New York, colonists tore down a statue of King George III. In Boston, the sound of cannons could be heard for hours. Question number 9. On July 2nd, 1776, the Second Continental Congress voted that the 13 colonies were, quote, free and independent states. The document was adopted on the more famous July 4th, 1776. What did Congress do to the document from July 2nd to July 4th? Well, the textbook says they polished Jefferson's language. What that means is they basically tore through it and made a lot of amendments and changes and said, nah, you can't say that. Ooh, you need to say this. And it really was a tough thing for Jefferson to listen to people tear his document apart. But eventually, they got it worked out. Question 10. What stood out about President John Hancock's signature? He made it nice and big. That's why today, if you sign a document, someone might say, put your John Hancock there. As you can see on the Declaration of Independence right here, his name is clearly much bigger than everyone else's. Question 11. How did the Patriots react to the news of the Declaration of Independence? Oh, they went crazy. There were lots of parties, lots of joy and celebrations. Sometimes they got a little rowdy. The Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence consists of a preamble, or introduction, followed by three main parts. Unalienable human rights. The first section of the Declaration stresses the idea of natural rights, or rights that belong to all people from birth. In bold, ringing words, Jefferson wrote, primary source, the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. According to the Declaration of Independence, people form governments in order to protect their natural rights and liberties. Some of these principles were also part of the Magna Carta, a document that challenged the power of King John of England 500 years before the writing of the Declaration. Question number 12. What does the word preamble mean? A preamble is an introduction. So the preamble to the Declaration of Independence was the introduction to what are we going to say? Question number 13. What does the phrase natural rights mean? Natural rights are rights that belong to someone from birth. Anyone from birth. Question 14. According to Jefferson, what is a self-evident truth about men, and women too, of course? That all men are created equal. That they are given by their Creator certain unalienable rights. Question 15. According to Jefferson, we are endowed with these three unalienable rights. What are they? They are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Question 16. According to Jefferson, why do people form governments? People form governments to protect their natural rights and liberties. These unalienable rights, including the rights to be free and to choose how to live, cannot be taken away by governments, for governments can exist only if they have the consent of the governed. If a government fails to protect the rights of the citizens, then it is the people's right and duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Ideas such as unalienable rights adopted by the Founding Fathers, men such as George Washington, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, are good examples of the civic virtues that have since become the cornerstone of American government. These values continue to ensure that human rights are protected and human needs are met in our nation. Question number 17. According to Jefferson, if a government fails to protect the rights of its citizens, what is the right and duty of those citizens to do? It's their duty and right to get rid of that government and to have a new government that does what it's supposed to do. Colonial grievances. The second part of the Declaration lists the wrongs, or grievances, that led the Americans to break away from Britain. Jefferson condemned King George III for disbanding colonial legislatures and for sending troops to the colonies in peacetime. He complained about limits on trade and about taxes imposed without the consent of the people. Jefferson listed many other grievances to show why the colonists had the right to rebel. He also pointed out that the colonies had petitioned the king to correct these injustices, yet the injustices remained. A ruler who treated his subjects in this manner, he boldly concluded, is a tyrant and not fit to rule. Primary source, the Declaration of Independence. In every state of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Question 18. What does the word grievance mean? A grievance is a complaint. It's a list of wrongs. It's something that you want to say, hey, this is not the way we should be treated. Question 19. What does Jefferson include in his second part of the Declaration of Independence? A whole long list of things that we as colonists were upset about with King George III. All of our grievances, all the things that are like, hey, this is why we're doing what we're doing. You've done this, and you've done this, and you've done this, and we are sick of it. And here is our list of our complaints. Independence. The last part of the Declaration announces that the colonies are the United States of America. All political ties with Britain have been cut. As a free and independent nation, the United States has the full power to, quote, levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which independent states may have right to do. The signers closed the declaration with a solemn pledge, quote, and for the support of this declaration with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Question 20. What did Jefferson include in the last part of the Declaration of Independence? His last part, he saves the best for last. He announces that we are a free country. We are no longer with you, Britain. We are the United States of America. Question 21. What makes an impact on you with the last sentence in the Declaration of Independence? Well, what should hit you is the fact that they were saying we are doing this together and we are risking our lives as a team, and we're going to make sure that we are going to see this through. And hopefully when he says divine providence, he's talking about God. In that case, he's hoping that, hey, we're in this together and we're having eyes over us, and let's make this happen. Well, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, here is a little quote about Benjamin Franklin. Benjamin Franklin wasn't trusted to write the Declaration of Independence, as it was feared that he would put a joke in it. After signing the Declaration of Independence, he joked, quote, "Gentlemen, we must now all hang together, or we shall most assuredly all hang separately." Oh, Benjamin Franklin. He was a man of words. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.